District 5 representative, Mr. Ricky Booth, will lead us in that invocation, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Tim Weissayer, our District 3 representative. Our mission statement will be read by Terry Castillo, our District 1 representative. And at this time, I please ask that everyone silence your phones. Please rise, and Mr. Booth.
Thank you, Mr. Soto.
The invocation.
If you please bow with me. Lord, we come before you tonight asking, as we always do, for your guidance and your direction. As your word tells us, there's evil in this world, and we have and will be witness to it throughout our lives. But I believe in faith and hope and love, and I believe love will prevail. And through your love, we can all live in peace together and have peace in our hearts. And it is in Jesus' name I pray tonight. Amen.
You join me as we pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Ms. Castillo.
Yes, I will read our mission statement, which is inspiring all learners to reach their highest potential as responsible, productive citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Castillo.
Welcome.
And next we will afford an opportunity for board members and the superintendent to make a comment, a public comment. I will go ahead and just go down the list over here with District 4. Mr. Thacker.
No comments tonight, thank you.
District 1.
Yes, I just want to thank all of the teachers and the parents and everyone who communicated with me during the past 2 weeks. I know it's been kind of crazy, but I do appreciate having the opportunity to have public discourse. Everybody that I spoke with was exceptionally respectful, even when we disagreed, and I'm just really happy that we have that kind of community. So thank you, everyone.
Those were excellent comments, Ms. Castillo, and if I may, I would like to just echo those very same sentiments. I can't say enough of how proud I am of our community and of their form of expression and how they've done it. And of course, we are in this school district and this school board is always receptive to hearing from everyone that's being affected by the decisions that we make. Thank you all. District 3.
I would
Mr.
say,
Whiteside.
well said, well done.
Thank you. District 5.
I just wanted to say congratulations to our graduates. I know we kind of had those commencements happen. And I wanted to thank, I know because I think Dr. Pace charged each staff, each individual high school with coming up with their own plan. And I just want to commend all those principals and their staff for doing a great job and coming up with a plan that fit each of their schools and each of their graduation populations. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to the class of 2020. And I think somebody needs to say it. I will. We'll probably say it many times tonight. I can't thank Dr. Pace enough. I don't think you could have a job in the state of Florida or maybe even around the country that's as hard as being a superintendent of a large school district. And Dr. Pace has done a phenomenal job. Her staff has done a phenomenal job. I want to say thank you to all you. Congratulations, because I see you guys sitting there. That reminded me as well. Our communications team won all those awards, so congratulations to you guys. Now, I thought about that this morning too when our newsletter was going out, or yesterday, because of course it looks awesome, and thank you guys for doing that. So, okay, I'll be quiet now.
That's
Hard to talk.
excellent statements. And Dr. Pace, it was a tough job before any of this, and it's just become probably the toughest job in the country. And I agree with Mr. Booth. And of course, keep handling it well. We're all here to support you and make sure that we do the right thing for our community. Is your turn for comments, ma'am?
Nothing other than to say thank you. I appreciate the support of the board, the support of the community, and my team has been just truly amazing. So from our community relations team to have 9 national awards, to just the people across the district who've come together and worked together to develop our back to school and back to learning plans. And we'll continue to adapt those as changes occur. So thank you.
Very well. Dr. Pace, our next item on the agenda are appointments and transfer, and I believe that you have some.
I do, sir, have 2 administrative appointments to bring to you tonight. Super excited to be getting all of the principalships at our schools filled before school begins. First, for your consideration, board, under 2.01 is the approval of the administrative appointment for the principal at Professional and Technical High School and Osceola Technical College. As you know, we combined the responsibility at this role. And we've got a great leader to take the place of Mr. Ott. Her name is Patricia Collins. She is currently an assistant director for Travis Technical College and Travis Technical Academy in Polk County. She's been doing that since 2013. Formerly, she was a teacher and a guidance counselor at Mulberry Middle School in Polk County, a guidance counselor at Lake Gibson High School, a guidance counselor at Lake Alfred Middle School. She received her bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of South Florida, a master's degree in guidance counseling, and a family consultation from Stetson University. She's obtained her certification as a Director of Career and Technical Education from the University of South Florida and the University of West Florida, and has change management certification from Cornell University. And I'm very confident that Ms. Collins will do a great job bringing together the culture of OTEC and PASS in a very difficult time, because hands-on learning is such an important part of the program there. So we'd be happy to welcome Ms. Collins to the team with your approval board.
So moved.
I hear a motion to approve by Mr.
You sort
White-
that out, Chairman.
by Mr. Whitesire, a second by Mr. Thacker. Board, any discussion before we call the vote? Hearing no cause for discussion, we take the vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
I registered 5 votes. The vote passes 5-0.
And Chairman Soto, I have one more consideration for you under 2.02, and that would be the approval of the administrative appointment for the principal of Reedy Creek Elementary School. As you know, we learned just a couple of weeks ago this Ms. Godin and her husband have a business opportunity at Deer Mountain Place and wanted to move. So I'm pleased tonight to recommend Dr. Joni Miranda Diaz to be the principal of Reedy Creek Elementary School. Dr. Diaz has been a teacher at Academia Minomita in Puerto Rico, a teacher at Wesleyan Academy, the curriculum director at the Leadership Christian Academy, Partnership Plus educational consultant for Pearson Education, curriculum consulting specialist, and since 2014 has been the general director of Academia Minomita de Summit Hills in Puerto Rico. She received her bachelor's degree in elementary education, special education from the University of Puerto Rico, a master's degree in management educational leadership from Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, and her doctorate in special education from the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. Dr. Diaz also has close ties to our community, our district office. She is a niece of Marianne Rodriguez, our director for early childhood education. And Dr. Diaz is very excited about joining the team with, of course, your approval board.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve by Ms. Castillo and a second by Mr. Booth. Board, any other discussion before we take the vote? Hearing none, we therefore vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
I registered 5. The vote passes 5-0. Congratulations. And that takes us to the next item on our board agenda, which is our public comment. I have the yellow sheets, which we ask folks, members of our community that wishes to give a public comment for 3 minutes to fill out this sheet. I don't have any particular order except how they were handed to me. And so I will call Professor Cruz to the podium. Sir, you have 3 minutes to make your statement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this opportunity. Board members, staff, Dr. Pace. I'm here not as a professor, I'm here as a parent. I have a child, District 3, that is going to school. As you know, I'm running for School Board District 3 as well. Mr. Chairman, I know we spoke before in the courtroom when we was in teen court, and we spoke about the safety of our children, how we care about the children that we have, why we care about them, why we invest our time in them, as we spoke as well, Ms. Castillo. And Mr. Ricky Booth, we spoke at the sludge.
That's right.
We have, and previously, I don't know, we met Dr. Pace. I'm worried, and I'm here speaking as a parent, and I'm scared that my child will go to school and become infected. I'm scared that my child one day will come and say it's positive. We know that a lot of cases, nothing happened. But I don't want to be that percentage of my child losing a child because he's going to school. It's a fortune that I will be able to have in my home, and he will be able to do option number 2. That I appreciate that option is being given to us. But we have a lot of families out there, because I work constantly with poor families and court cases and juvenile diversions, that they don't have that luxury, they don't have that option. And they might take that sacrifice sending their children because they cannot afford a daycare or they have to go to work. I don't want them to be more than statistics. I understand that you have an obligation as a board and as a community, we need to move forward. But we need to understand that we cannot just lose a life just for an idea, an ideology, something that we want to push. Please think about those who cannot be here. Think about those children and teachers and professors that we could lose just by a decision that we're gonna make. I appreciate Council as well, everybody who's given me the chance to be here, and the audience and Mr. Commissioner as well. Thank you all. Have a nice day.
Please reset the timer. Ms. Tamika Lyles. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I think it's a little bit better. You can hear me a little bit better. I'm here today as a community leader and activist in the community. But first and foremost, before I am that in the community, I'm first a parent. And I am very concerned with the decisions to open our schools at this current time. As you know, the COVID-19 numbers are increasing drastically in this state. And I only believe that it has not impacted as many of our children and youth because our children and youth have not been in school. They have not had the interaction. But upon us opening these schools and allowing our students to return, they are going to be interacting with each other, which is going to cause a huge problem and a huge infection rate with this. I am very concerned. As a parent of a child that has asthma, I've made the decision that my child is going to take the option for digital learning. However, I'm also a teacher. And the two options that I have been given as a teacher is that I return into my classroom or I have digital learning. And if I do digital learning, even with that, I am required to be at the school. So I have, even though, made the decision that to minimize the risk of my very own child from becoming infected, I am still risking my child being infected by just returning to school myself. As a teacher, I risk taking that infection back to my child and to my mother, who is also very ill. So I ask you today, please take into consideration that as a teacher of at least a minimum of 150 students that I interact with on a daily basis, if I become infected, are all of my 150 students going to also quarantine as I quarantine? Are their teachers going to be notified where they also quarantine? Because they're going to take that infection back home. And not only are we going to have students that's infected, we're going to have teachers infected, and then they're taking it back home to their parents and or siblings or loved ones that are there in their home with them. So I ask you to please take into consideration these issues among many others that we have, but for lack of time, I'm just going to say, as a teacher and someone that is active in this community, I urge you to please, please, please take our children into consideration in their safety, as well as our teachers and staff. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Right, and our final request for public comments is from Mr. Alvin, I believe it's Codner. If I said that wrong, please correct me on the record.
Yes, you said it correct. Thank you. My name is Alvin Codner. Hope all of y'all are doing well today. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here as a former Osceola County teacher. I'm currently in Polk County right now. And I just want to all to really think about the youth and these kids, these students, because I really do care about my past students that I had at Thacker Avenue Elementary as well as Chestnut Elementary. A lot of those kids, especially ones in Thacker, they're living in the motels that aren't even up to par to live in. So adding any other, making them go to school, whatever the case may be, and putting their lives more at risk, it concerns me. So me personally, I don't think any school district in the nation has a solid plan to say they can ensure safety for these kids. I know it's a tough job for you all as decision makers to decide what you're gonna do for all these families and all these parents and all these students. A lot depends on on y'all shoulders. So I understand that, but please, if it takes the time to prolong the decision to exhaust all the options as possible, please do that. I know that the date of August 24th is approaching soon, but please do your due diligence in exhausting all your options, looking at other school district counties and what they're doing, and figuring out the best plan possible for these students. Because me as a former teacher here in Osceola County School District and a current one in Polk County right now, I just think we need to figure out more options. That's all, and I just want y'all to take that in consideration. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could I ask a question?
Sir,
Does Polk County, have they said anything yet?
They had a school board meeting today. They gave a few options out, which I personally don't agree
That's fine.
with. But
I can go
Yeah.
right to the source instead of having to look up.
Polk County definitely. They had a school board meeting today about it. They pushed it back to the 24th. If the cases begin to rise closer to the date, they may push the start date for students to return later on in August. If not, we as teachers still report the first 2 weeks to do training, and with the substitute teachers, they do their COVID-19 training and stuff like that. So it's still all up in the air depending on what happens in August, as in the data shows.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right, so that will do it for the public comments from the podium. I understand that we do have a 3-minute video that was submitted as a public comment and that can be played at this moment, correct? Very well. Mr. Rubin, if we could begin the playback of that video.
Lorette Asher, 9435 Atlanta Drive, Holaport, 34773. I request you oppose item 1301, approval of the agreement between the Foundation for Osceola Education and the School Board of Osceola County to disperse WCI funding. I believe the superintendent, who is requesting this approval, sits on the board of directors for the foundation receiving the funds, as does the district manager for Waste Connection, the entity that provides these funds as a part of the agreement with the county. The agreement is too vague, and given the high dollar figures involved, should have more specific and measurable goals written within. The Education Foundation already receives a direct stipend from host fees generated at the landfill, and their president has previously stated that those funds go directly towards salaries only. In 2016, the salary for the foundation president was approximately $56,000. In 2017, a new president was hired, and the Form 990s show he received $37,958 for a 40-hour work week, which likely reflects a prorated amount given the April hire. Now, less than 4 years later, the salary has jumped to $100,000 based on a campaign disclosure form filed by the president who is running for state office. I found the amount of increase very shocking, and it leads me to question the fiscal responsibility in the management of funds given to this nonprofit entity. Please deny this request, or at the very least table it until such agreement is written to present a clearly defined structure so citizens can ascertain exactly how the Education Foundation will be spending our school's money. Or better yet, take a page from the foundation itself and use the full amount of landfill funds to raise salaries within our school system. Thank you for your time.
So I think at this time, we're gonna take a recess so that we can adjust the technology to continue on with our public school board meeting. Let's call it 5 minutes. 5 minutes, would that be, I'm sorry, would 5 minutes be enough this time?
2 to 3 is fine. Do you want to do 5? That's good.
5 is fine. march over to the boys' room.
You're just.
That's not gonna work. Just have Dana email them that to say.
I thought Fred had the best mask until I saw Sarah's.
I know, she's got a good one.
This is rock. Go Gators. I know Tim would like one of those. Sarah, if you
I had a
wanted-
different comment about that.
If you'd like to bring him one in, I'd love to see him wear it.
Ordered my Auburn ones, they're not here yet.
They're not here yet?
Actually, I just got the notice that they're shipped.
I like what Robert's doing. That's a good idea.
He always.
I'll wait for you guys to sit down or I'll call back. All right.
I don't know if he's ready, I don't know if he's ready.
Oh, okay.
Ruben said he needed 2 to 3 minutes.
Well, the connection didn't go
I'm
through,
just,
so I don't.
I'm messing with him. Messing. You good? How we doing? He's good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Booth. So I will go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and we will proceed with the agenda. Our next item on the agenda is calling for agenda modifications. I'll go down the list, down from my left.
None.
Mr. Thacker, Ms. Castillo,
None.
none from me.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Westmeyer.
No, sir.
Therefore, do I have a motion?
No, no, what?
Oh. Dr. Pace.
Thank you Chairman Soto, we will need to pull item 10.03. That would be a technology contract with Power School. We've not yet received the signed contract back from that particular vendor. I will be modifying items 13.01 based on request from the board to provide two options for that particular agreement. And also we'll be modifying item 15.01, the back to school update, to include consideration of an alternative school calendar for the 2021 school year. With your permission, board.
I move for approval of the agenda with the removal of item 10.03 and the modifications of 13.01 and 15.01 and approval of the consent.
Second.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Thacker, the agenda with said modifications, a second by Ms. Castillo. Board, anything to discuss before we take a vote? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of these modifications and the consent agenda, please state aye.
Aye.
Register 5, vote passes 5-0. Which brings us to information item, and in 11.01 and 11.02 are hereby incorporated into the record for the board. And 11.03, Ms. Sarah Graver will present on the proposed budget. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Do we have a microphone here? That's like
See in the ceiling.
Oh.
Good.
Okay, sorry. All right. Can you guys hear me with this on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good evening, board members. Tonight we're presenting the 2020-21 proposed tentative budget. This presentation is for informational purposes only at this time. You will not be taking action to approve the budget tonight. The budget being presented this evening is based on the conference report, or the first FEFP calculation, as was released back on March 15th. The Department of Education should release the second FEFP calculation later this week, which will then replace the estimated tax roll with the actual certified tax roll. Based on that information, we will make the necessary changes and present a tentative budget for your approval at the July 28th public hearing. At this time, I would like to briefly walk you and the public through the budget and provide a summary of the information within this document. The first page of the document is a letter from Superintendent Pace that outlines the goals of the district's strategic plan. As we work through the budget process, we are constantly ensuring that funds are allocated in alignment with these goals as set out by the school board. The next page provides a district overview, including the county population, projected FTE, and number of district employees. The pie charts in the middle of the page reflect funding from federal, state, and local sources and the breakdown of schools by type. As you can see, for the 2020-21 school year, 29% of public schools in Osceola County are charter schools. The graph at the bottom of the page summarizes the operating budget by major category. Next, we have the table of contents to guide the readers through the document, and then that brings us to the introduction section. On page I-2, we have the budget timeline. The highlighted sections are the board meetings related to the budget process as required by the Truth in Millage Act, or TRIM. Tonight, we're presenting a proposed tentative budget. The public hearing to adopt the tentative budget and millage rates will be held on July 28th. Then the public hearing to adopt the final budget and millage will be held on September 8th. Following the timeline are our standard budget conventions. This section provides definitions and additional details regarding the development of the budget. The graph on page I-6 provides a historical overview of the district's FTE over the last 10 years. The total projection for the 2020-21 school year is 71,315 FTE, which represents an increase of 1,893 FTE over the 2019-20 year. The next couple of pages provide FTE projections by school. The Property Appraiser's Office certified the tax roll on June 29th. Line 4 of the certification reflects the gross taxable value of $33.9 billion. The certified amount of $393 million more than DOE's initial estimate in the conference report. The proposed millage rate may be adjusted when the certified tax roll is incorporated into the second FEFP calculation. The graph on page I-11 provides historical data relative to the property tax millage rates and levies over the last 10 years. You can see how the total millage rate has decreased while the tax roll has continued to increase over the last several years. Since the legislature implemented a rollback of the required local effort millage rate in the 2016-17 year, $112.9 million less has been levied for Florida K-12 education than if the RLE had been held constant. This report compares the fourth FEFP calculation for 2020 to the 2021 conference report. The base student allocation of $4,319 is on line 15. This is an increase of $40 per student over the prior year. At the bottom of the page on line 52, there's an increase in total funding of $24.8 million. And right below that, you'll see that this equates to a $153 increase per student, or 2.09%. However, it's important to note that $12.1 million of this increase is restricted for the new teacher salary allocation. Next, page I-13 shows the change in total FEFP funding and funding per student since the 2013-14 school year. Although funding levels have increased over the last several years, keep in mind that a large part of the additional funding per student has been allocated to restricted programs, including Safe Schools, mental health, Best and Brightest bonuses, and now the teacher salary allocation. Page I-14 shows the statewide ranking of funding per student. And again, we have Osceola at the bottom. Now we're receiving $7,500 per FTE. The next several pages define and describe the different components of the FEFP. As part of statutory requirements, the board will also adopt a policy for the expenditure of lottery funds as part of its tentative budget. Page I-21 is the proposed policy for the 2020-21 school year. While funds were originally allocated in the FEFP conference report, they will be eliminated when the second calculation is released, as the governor vetoed the school recognition and discretionary lottery funding for this fiscal year. On page I-22 is a summary of the overall budget by fund. The detail supporting the summary is in subsequent sections of the budget document. The top right section shows the total proposed millage of 6.022 mils, and the bottom right reflects the total proposed budget of over $1.3 billion. Since the certified tax roll for Osceola is greater than the estimate used in the conference report, we expect a slight decrease in the RLE millage rate to net the same revenue from local collections. The next section of the budget document presents samples of the resolutions to adopt the tentative millage rates and the tentative budget. The amounts will be updated based on DOE's second FEFP calculation, and we will be seeking approval of these resolutions at the public hearing on July 28th. TRIM requires the board to publish specific advertisements related to the budget. The next few pages are samples of the following advertisements. First is the notice of budget hearing. Next, we have, if the proposed millage rate exceeds the rollback rate, we will be required to publish this notice of proposed tax increase instead. Then we have the budget summary ad, which is similar to the budget summary we discussed earlier, except for the exclusion of the internal service funds. And then notice of tax for school capital outlay. The final versions of these ads will be published in the Osceola section of the Orlando Sentinel on Sunday, July 26th, as required by TRIM guidelines. The general fund budget is the operating budget for the school district. It accounts for most of the district's salaries and benefits and other operating costs such as utilities, fuel, supplies, and equipment. Page 1-3 is the long-range forecast for the general fund. The 1920 figures are still estimates as we're currently in the process of closing out the last fiscal year. However, we're confident that the district will end the year with a balanced budget as originally planned. For the 2020-21 school year, our current proposal is an operating surplus of $1.9 million, which will allow us to maintain a financial condition ratio of 9.4%. The general fund budget summary provides the same information with additional detail. On this schedule, estimated revenues are presented by funding source and appropriations are presented by major category. Pages 1-5 through 1-7 are supporting schedules. Each of these schedules also compares the 2020-21 tentative budget to the 2019-20 adopted budget. Page 1-8 shows the detailed SAI budget, or supplemental academic instruction. Several programs previously funded through SAI have been shifted to the CARES Act funding, which we'll cover later in this presentation. The resulting savings to the SAI budget is being held in reserve in anticipation of a mid-year cut to state revenues. Page 1-9 shows the detailed budget of the reading allocation. And then the next two pages show the detail of the Safe Schools allocation to support our school resource officers. $450,000 was unspent this past year from the sheriff waiving our SRO costs during the COVID shutdown period. These funds have allowed us to carry over into the new year and will allow us to fully fund the necessary SROs through the Safe Schools allocation without additional line item funding. Beginning on page 1-12 is the full list of line item allocations. Enterprise software costs previously charged here have been shifted to capital funding for the 2020-21 budget, resulting in a net $2.6 million reduction in line items from the prior year. Switching gears from the operating budget, the debt service fund accounts for all of the district's long-term debt. Similar to the schedules in the general fund, a summary of revenues and appropriations is included with a year-to-year comparison of the budget. The summary is followed by supporting schedules by fund. Pages 2-7 and 2-8 list future debt service payments through 2034. The total principal amount outstanding is currently $251.5 million. The sum of principal and interest payments through 2034 is $287.6 million. The debt capacity analysis on page 2-9 shows the amount of $1.5 million capital outlay funding that is obligated for the repayment of debt. At the bottom of the page, the percent indebted measures that amount as a percentage of revenue. Since the district has not issued debt to build new schools in recent years, this percentage indebted continues to decline as the district pays off its old debt. Revenue and expenditure activity related to the construction and renovation of the district's buildings and grounds are reported in the Capital Projects Fund. The major sources of revenue for the Capital Projects Fund include impact fees, the $1.5 million capital outlay tax, and our sales tax. Page 3-3 is a summary of the 5-year capital plan, which is followed by detailed plans broken down between capacity sources and non-capacity sources. On page 3-4, you can see that this plan includes funding for the construction of 3 new K-8 schools within the next 5 years. On page 3-5, funding has been provided for maintenance and renovation of our facilities, along with funding for buses, student computers, and additional technology items. Following the capital plan are standard schedules for revenues and appropriations and supporting schedules by fund. Then the remainder of the capital projects section details the appropriations for safety and security, technology, capital renewal, and deferred maintenance projects, including carryovers. Next, we have the Special Revenue Fund, which is used to record the activity of the food service program and federal grants. The CARES Act funding has been added for the new fiscal year. The food service budget can be found on pages 4-5 and 4-6. The food service fund balance has declined over the last several months as we've continued to provide meals for students and preserve jobs. We've been able to absorb this reduction in revenue due to our fund balance reserves within the food service program. The following pages detail all other federal grants. And then new for fiscal year 2020-21, Osceola School District has been allocated $17.3 million in CARES Act funding. These funds are provided to assist with additional costs due to COVID-19. So page 4-13 details the allocation of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or ESSER, portion of the CARES Act funding. Dollars have been allocated for digital devices for students, an additional voluntary pre-planning day to train staff on safety protocols upon returning to school campuses next month, and additional curriculum programs to aid in student success as a result of learning delays due to the COVID slide. Page 4-14 details the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, or the GEAR portion of the CARES Act. This is a smaller portion that is designed specifically to address summer recovery. And then the final section of the budget document is the Internal Service Fund budget. This fund accounts for the district's self-insured group health and life insurance and casualty insurance programs. The board's contributions for employee coverage and deductions for dependent coverage are recorded in this fund. Again, standard schedules summarizing estimated revenues and appropriations are followed by supporting schedules. Pages 5-5 and 5-6 show the costs associated with the Health Insurance Trust Fund. This budget includes the new plan design changes to become effective October 1st with no increase in cost to our employees. The final 2 pages of the document show the activity related to the Casualty Loss Fund, which includes our property and workers' compensation insurance programs. We've continued to see an increase in workers' compensation costs. However, controlling these expenses will be an area of intentional focus for the upcoming year. And board members, that concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions regarding the proposed tentative budget at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Graver. Board, just look to my left here.
Nice job, Sarah. Jose, your team.
I don't have any specific questions other than 4-10, is that where the CARES Act allocation is?
I think it's 4-13
4-13?
is where it's detailed out specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Graver, as well.
Thank you, Sarah. You do a great job as always.
Thank you.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Sarah. Yep, you're awesome.
So board, that concludes our information agenda items. And our next item on the agenda will be the regular facilities, number 12.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of item 12.04.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve 12.04. All regular items are submitted under facilities by Mr. Booth, second by Ms. Castillo. I'll call for comments or discussion before taking a vote. Seeing no indications, we vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
I registered 5, the vote passes 5-0. Our next item on the agenda is 13.01 as amended by the superintendent to include 2 proposals. Before I begin the discussion of this item, I just want to go ahead and explain clarify some procedural issues to the board and to the public and all those that are interested in this item. This item came before the board originally. Option 1 came before the board in a previous school board meeting 2 weeks ago, and the item was tabled in order to give the board and an opportunity to inquire, find out more about the contracts, about the intent of the parties, the history of the contractual relationship, and it was never voted on by the board. And so I asked that it be brought back again, and I understand that during this 2-week period, an alternate proposal was also forwarded. The superintendent has a recommendation on either one, if I am correct, for this board to consider, right? So that's why we have two two contracts for us to discuss tonight. And that is the procedure as to why we have them. And I think it's very important that we consider the first option, which was the initial recommendation from the school district superintendent for this board's consideration upon her request for approval. And so with that, since I will be involved in the discussion, I'm going to first call other board members. Or should I begin?
Are you asking for questions?
Yeah, before we make any motions, I just want to go ahead and give everybody an opportunity before, because discussing the item before a motion is different than afterwards.
Okay. Well, I have some questions, I guess, if this is the time to do it.
Kick it off. That's what I'm inviting you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so just because now we have two different versions of this to consider, so I just need clarification. Option one would be perpetual, and it does not, so there's no ending date to the agreement. The Education Foundation would receive $120,000 as long as we receive $220,000, yes?
Unless the board were to recommend different action during that period of time or after that period of time. But that is the original recommendation, to support the programs that the foundation has provided through these dollars for us, such as our medical pipeline, our construction pipeline, bookmark buddies, and those types of things.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask clarification for the latter part of that.
Sure.
You said that it would be perpetual unless we decide differently through the years or when it comes up for approval again.
Members of the board have the opportunity to bring forward something, a change whenever you would like, but in particular, after the agreement ends, that someone could bring it back up.
Got it. And then the version 2 is an agreement that actually decreases the funds going to the foundation for 3 years. So we start at 120 this year, and then it decreases for 3 years. Yes?
Correct. The previous agreement was also a 3-year agreement.
Okay. And then you did mention what these funds go for. You mentioned it was book buddies. What else?
Bookmark buddies, construction pipeline, the medical pipeline. I provided to the board some information from the foundation staff, Carrie Avery, specifically about some of the things that the dollars have been used for. In addition, the foundation has always sponsored our Juilliard Start program
Yes.
in the summer.
Of course.
Obviously, this June it was very, very different. We couldn't bring our Juilliard guest artists to us, but we did do some virtual work with that. But that's been another big piece. And the other one that I'd almost forgotten, but has also been important, is the VPK Springs program that we offer in several of our VPK programs where they're learning to play the little violins. And there's research to support that improves reading and math skills.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Can't see a little light bulb.
I don't have a light.
Yeah, I don't think we have those.
I don't think we have the lights anymore. We're just gonna have to raise our hand.
Boo.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if you travel around the state and we have to the school board conferences, the state school board, we're around other school board members, what you'll hear there is that there are a lot of counties that don't have good relationships with their education foundations. In fact, the education foundation almost seems to work against what the school board and what district staff is trying to do. I want to say, and I want everybody to know in Osceola County, and no matter how this goes tonight, that we have a great working relationship with our foundation, and our foundation is actually drives a lot of the work that we do, and that what we put in our strategic plan, the foundation helps to drive that. And coming from the private side and working with some nonprofit groups, two in particular that I have worked with, I can say that for maybe even a decade or so now, maybe not that long, but close, that they have managed those scholarships funds for us. And because most of the nonprofits that I serve on the boards don't have staffs, it's great that we have access to the Education Foundation staff. Taking my school board member hat off, my volunteer hat on, it's great you have a staff and you have availability to folks that will manage that and get that put out, get that sent to instead of just writing a check to a kid, which wasn't the right way to do it. They actually have a staff that can get that done and get that $500 a semester for 2 years if you do a $2,000 scholarship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you know, I've volunteered for some of the programs. I've been on the Pass Forward to program. So I just want to say thank you to the Education Foundation for all the work that they do. And I know no matter what we decide here tonight is not, we're not saying that we don't have a great relationship with them. But I will say this about moving forward. We are here in a time where these folks have put a budget together. We are here in a time where the money is maybe not there going forward. And at least for the next couple of years, I think it may be in the best interest of the school board to fund the Education Foundation at the amount that we have agreed upon. I hate to use the word perpetual because I think really, to answer your question, Ms. Castillo, you, I won't be here anymore, but you and this board beyond me can change this agreement at any time.
Right.
So that's where I'm at on it.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Mr. Thacker?
Wherever you want to go. I totally agree with everything Ricky said about our relationship. It probably couldn't be any better than what it is. That being said, 3 years ago, we had made an agreement to ramp down that number, and I'm not quite sure how we got where we are. I'm okay with the $120,000 this year, based on everything that's happened, the assumption it was there. I don't have any desire to make y'all rework everything that you've already done, so. I do have a real problem with the perpetual piece, because I can tell you what happens with perpetual things. In 5 years, nobody will even know about it on this board, and it'll be there forever. I think it's a good idea to bring it up on a regular basis, 2, 3 years, whatever it happens to be, so everybody knows it's out there and knows what's going on with it, particularly as new board members come and go. So I get that somebody could bring it up and say we want to change it, but let's face it, in 5 years, whole new board up here, nobody may not even know this exists or where it comes from. So I am in favor of the timeline. The option B that you have here, it's a little steeper than I would like. Again, the $120,000 for me this year, that's fine. I don't have any question about that. But I would feel a little better if we had to drop off a little bit over the next 2 years. I'm not trying to work it down to nothing, but I think somewhere $80,000 and $100,000 feels more right for me. And certainly, as exemplified this year, we don't know what can happen and where funds need to be or not need to be. And I just hate to lose options.
Very good. I know you have, yes?
Yeah.
Mr. Weiss.
So I'll just echo the sentiments, and obviously, you know, we have friends from the foundation here that we care about, we value, and we value the work and the partnership, and that's never been in question. And I want to make sure that you hear that from me, because obviously I was one who was very particular about this item. And I want you to know that the spirit behind it isn't at all to undermine or devalue the partnership and the relationship that exists between this board and the foundation. And as you know, I've sat on the foundation board myself and truly value the work that the organization does. I do have a similar opinion to Mr. Thacker in that when we had this discussion 3 years ago, this board made the decision that it was going to be 3 years, that we were going to scale it down, that we'd get to the 120, and that it would end. I don't know if all board members are in agreement on this or not, but it did catch me by surprise to have a recommendation come for $120,000 in perpetuity, because when we made that decision 3 years ago as a board, that was not our expectation. And I can solely chalk that up to just misunderstandings, and I have no issue with that whatsoever. Regarding your comments, Mr. Thacker, on the structure, you know, I could move a little bit, I think, on where I stand, so that the foundation representatives here know I stand in favor of option 2. I fully agree with the idea that no intent was ever in place to say, let's in any way impact the foundation as it sits today in your current budget year. That's not what I want either. And once I heard that the foundation already planned its budget based upon expecting this money, that became an easy decision to say, well, let's go ahead and keep it the way it is for this year, but let's start working on completing the plan that this board had set in motion 3 years ago. So when you compound all of that and you think 3 years ago we had this conversation, we got to 120. Now we sit here again today and we talk about another 3 years. We're talking about a 6-year timeline that gives or has given the foundation time to continue to rework and rethink what programs should remain in perpetuity in partnership with the district and the foundation, what additional funding sources may be sought after by the foundation to help support programs if they're deemed to be warranted to continue, which I think most would agree most probably would or should. So I don't think for a moment, and I mean this with all sincerity to friendships in the audience as well as fiduciaries at the board, I don't think by any stretch this is a signal of any lack of desire to support the work of the foundation or the partnership that exists. I completely agree with what Mr. Booth's opening comments were about the blessing that we have as a community, have the partnership that we have. Board, to be clear, I would absolutely not vote at all for option 1 tonight. I would vote against that. I would vote for option 2 tonight. I could be flexible on what Mr. Thacker just brought up on the idea of maybe finding some tweak in there. I don't know what that would mean, and I don't know if that's just not just kicking the can further down the road, to be honest with you. I would be prepared to make motions, but I would turn back to the chair first and allow opportunity for discussion, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I purposefully did not call for any motion until we had a little bit of discussion because we do have absolutely 2 options and they have to be handled in a certain way. And I thank everyone for their comments, for their input. This is the purpose of why this process is taking this, has taken on this shape. So I'm going to be using my time in this discussion to actually ask some questions. I believe that the executive director of the Education Foundation is present, and if she would agree, if she would indulge me, I would like to just have some questions answered.
Absolutely.
Ms. Carey, can you please approach the podium then? Ms. Carey, not just for my benefit, but for the benefit of other people that want a historical background as to the Education Foundation, its beginnings, its relationship historically with the school district, and with particular attention within the last 10 years, since 2010. Can you guide us pretty much how this whole relationship started?
Of course, historically, the school district is always supported the Education Foundation through in-kind services and financial contribution. It originally started out as a line item in the school district's budget, and I believe it was in 2010 that school board elected to take it out as a line item, stating that they weren't sure that it was appropriate to issue tax dollars to the Education Foundation, and elected at that point in time to issue the funds through the waste services donation versus the line item on the school district's budget. I believe it was in 2017 when our president and executive director retired, and Fred and I joined the Education Foundation leadership team that we talked with Dr. Pace about some of the things that the Education Foundation had under its umbrella and what the school district had under their umbrella, and what those funds were used for to support, one of which was the education awards in the state of education. As you know, that the school board does host those events annually, and those funds were returned through over the 3-year period from 2017 to the present. And then the remaining funds, as Dr. Pace mentioned, are for our Gift for Teaching, Bookmark Buddy, Career Pipeline programs, as well as Start, Strings, and Osceola Reads. So I believe it was about a little over $83,000 that we received in the 19-20 budget was allotted to those programs in some way, shape, or form. And we hope that you will continue to support those programs because they are vital to us. As you are aware, as a nonprofit, we start off our year at basically zero and raise our funds within our community through grants and sponsorships. And your contribution from the waste services funds that comes in, and especially in that first quarter, helps us keep those programs running until some of our grants, sponsors, and unrestricted dollars come in throughout the rest of the year.
This contribution that has been made by the school district predates before 2010. 2010 was just when it.
Yes, sir. I've worked there for almost 18 years, and the school district has supported the foundation the entire time that I have worked there.
Very well. 18 years. I think you're qualified to speak a little bit more about the history of the relationship between.
Well, we do have Tommy. He is our founder, and I'm sure he dates back a couple years earlier than I.
He dates
And,
way back.
and with all due respect, I may have some questions for Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Tompkins as well, if it comes to that. But perhaps you can go ahead and fill in a little bit more of the blanks, again, for my benefit and for other members of the community. How would you describe the involvement of the school district in the operations, in the mission, and the programs that the foundation funds and manages?
I believe that the school district board and our superintendent and much of the school district leadership work in conjunction, and it is a partnership that we work together. As Dr. Pace mentioned, that with the school district's goals, that our foundation board tries to align within those goals and support things that are either new and upcoming that maybe the district doesn't have funding for, or focus on programs that and support those financially that the district may not be able to provide.
As a nonprofit, you have a board of directors,
Yes, sir.
and does that board of directors include any personnel or employees or board members of the school district?
Yes, we actually offer the opportunity for our school board to serve on our board as an ex officio member. All the members, I believe, decide annually who would like to learn about our organization and join our board. Dr. Pace is on our board as well.
And just for the record, Dr. Pace serves on the executive director board of the Education Foundation.
Yes, she serves on our board as an ex officio member as well.
As far as you know, every board member that's currently present have served on the board of the Education Foundation.
Correct.
I know Mr. Tim Weissier and myself have been here for almost 8 years.
Yes,
And we had at least one opportunity, Mr. Booth, can you confirm that as well?
yes.
Okay, very well. So everybody's very familiar then, at least with the governance of what goes on. All right, very
Yes, sir.
Besides those programs, you also manage charter schools?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that a little bit again for my knowledge and for?
Yes, our founder was a visionary and worked in conjunction with the school district back in, I believe it was the early 2000s. Our first school opened in, I believe, 2002. Up until this year, we had 3 charter schools. Starting the 1920 year, we have 2. One is currently operated in conjunction with an educational benefit district, which is Bella Lago Academy. Our second charter school is PM Wells Charter Academy. And our Canoe Creek charter just has actually moved into a charter, out of a charter into a public school as Canoe K-8.
And with that one, that was a school that was transferred to the district.
Yes.
And that was managed by your organization.
Correct.
Foundation prior to.
Yes, sir.
And that was to great benefit of the school district.
Yes. The vision of Tommy and the school board back in early 2000 was that we were in dire need of student stations, and the foundation applied for the charters to support our school district with additional student stations since the funding was not available at that time to our district.
Now, not all of your funding comes from, obviously, from the school board contribution.
Correct.
There's fund. Can you tell me what are the other sources of funding for your programs?
Yes, sir. Last year, foundation had roughly a $1.7 million budget, and that's our grant funding came in around about $500,000. Our sponsorships were between events that we host, corporate sponsorships and annual sponsors was about another $500,000. And then there are other fundraising opportunities that we use in addition to the school district waste services funds, as well as our contribution from waste services as well.
Very well. Now I'm gonna ask you a question that actually just came to mind, and it had to do with the video. So your foundation also has a president.
Yes, sir.
And your process. Can you explain the process of how you select your president?
Yes, I think most of our board members and probably most of the community know who Ken Smith is. He was our president for almost 25 years. He retired in 2017 upon the announcement of his retirement. Our Education Foundation Board elected to advertise his position. There were several people that submitted their applications. They had a review process, an interview process, and then they selected Mr. Hawkins.
All right, so it was a business decision that was made with basically a board. It was
Yes,
not
our
just-
board and executive board handled the actual process for replacing our president.
And of course, there's a lot of things that go into consideration.
Absolutely. There
especially
was
with-
criteria and
with
advertisement
a non-
and
with a nonprofit. There's
Yes.
a lot of things that need to go in there.
absolutely.
I don't have questions right now. I will offer the opportunity for any other board members to have any questions. Mr. Booth?
Yes, I have some questions.
Yes, sir.
Caught me off guard.
Oh, well, do you want me to
No,
call someone
No,
else?
no, no,
first?
I will say this, and actually, I don't even mind even going even further than that, but let me say this first. The superintendent of a school district should always be on the executive board of any education foundation around the state. I mean, that should just be.
It helps us with our alignment to the goals of the district. Absolutely.
100%. That should be, a healthy education foundation should have the superintendent of their school district on their board. Also, a school board member should always be a member of their board. And I've listened to all the comments tonight, and I can appreciate every one of them. I know what we did back in 2017. I know the situation that's moving forward is maybe a tough path.
Yes.
And so I'm not gonna go with option one or option two, but I'll say this, and maybe this might help a little bit, Mr. Thacker, with your discussion. I'll provide another option, I guess you'd call it option three, since we're really about options here. at the school
Mr.
district.
Booth?
Oh, you good?
I don't wanna go into that right
Okay.
now.
I'll wait.
I'll find an opportunity. I really just want to finish up my portion.
Okay,
Which
okay.
includes asking questions of some of the folks that are here who are
I
stakeholders.
will,
Do you have any questions for this witness?
I know Carrie,
You're good? Mr. Weissier? No. Ms. Castillo?
I do not have any questions for Ms. Carey.
Very well. All right. Mr. Thacker? All right. So let me just, I think I did have something else that I wanted to go into. Provide me a moment, and it has to do with this year. So you're the executive director,
Yes, sir.
and so you are involved with the budgeting of the organization. And do you only consider 1 year, or do you look, when you're making your decision for this next year's budget, do you not think maybe 2 or 3 years ahead of time?
Tommy has taught me to create a 100-year plan.
So it's not that different.
That's a little much for most of our board members, so we try to stick with a 5-year plan.
Okay, and
Yes,
so when you're thinking about these things, you're looking at your sources of revenue, you know, the contributions that you have expected historically, and pretty much you go ahead and you say, all right, this is how we're gonna develop these programs, we're gonna move forward.
Yes, sir.
And of course, since before can you just give me like a year when we started this relationship, you know, where the line item happened? Like, it was in the 90s, I believe?
I would guess, yes. Yes.
All right.
I could probably research it and give you the exact information. I know we have it in our files, but I don't know off the top of my head.
So for all this time, and then all of a sudden it's gonna end, and of course that's gonna change the whole, that's gonna be a substantial change, maybe even the culture of your foundation.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any other questions. I'll give one more opportunity if I see a hand. Thank you, Ms. Avery. I'd like
Thank
to
you.
just ask a few questions of Mr. Hawkins, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for agreeing to this. Can you shed a little bit more light at least as to what we're doing, what your organization, and how you're supporting the district's mission to inspire our learners to reach their highest potential, responsible, productive citizens?
Well, I'd first like to talk a little bit about my role at the foundation. My role is not what Ken Smith's role was. When Carrie and I talked about these positions that were offered to us, we agreed we'd be a team in the management of the foundation. Ken was a fundraiser. Ken was not involved in day-to-day making hiring decisions or involved in programs or events and how that would happen. He was I take that back. Ken was incredible with the golf tournament, but that was fundraising. Carrie and I do the day-to-day. She's there hands-on. I'm out meeting with our corporate sponsors, trying to get new sponsors. I worked on events. We just recently had another event this spring that we were fortunate to have it the weekend before everything shut down, that I had a brainchild that came up to do a fundraising event because we needed something in the spring. So I do things a little different like that. I'm more involved in the events that we have, making sure I'm a presence there, and how we can grow each and every one of the programs. Now we're gonna have to look at virtual programs. I also do the volunteers, the Bookmark Buddies, so very involved in the foundation and what we do and trying to enhance with the children.
What do you see for the future of Osceola County and our educational goals here?
Well, I think the partnership definitely has to continue and be stronger just because our district's growing. We need to work together with the state and what happens at the per student funding to make sure that that's going to be increased. It's ridiculous to me that we're 67th out of 67th and we have one of the largest and fastest growing school districts over the last 10 years. People want to live in Osceola for the same reasons all of us live here. And with that in a growing district and people want to raise their kids here and the public school system's going to have to help that. The partnership between the Education Foundation and the school district is going to have to continue to grow. Those programs we have, excuse me, especially with the focus on the career and technical, that's going to be vital. I firmly believe that a lot of the students that people may see they're a troubled student. It's not they're a troubled student. They're bored. They know they're not going to college. So offer them the opportunities for the career and technical, and they thrive. We need to make sure that if we can offer that at younger ages or younger grades, let that happen. And I want the foundation to be a part of that. I think Molly does an excellent job with our career and technical pipelines, and those may grow. We've talked about growing into a law enforcement and first responders. For everything from forestry division to taking people and having detectives come in and talk to them to see if they want to be that. Those are our heroes right now. So we'd have medical, we would have construction, we'd have law enforcement, and looking at how we can grow those. Our partnership with Gaylord Palms, we've talked about doing a culinary pipeline. The children that want to be involved in that. The foundation will take the lead of that, working in our partnership hand in hand to be a partner with the school district.
Very well. One last thing. No, actually, that was fine.
Mr. Chairman, if I could offer one thing, I know
Yes.
my salaries were mentioned in the video. When I first came on at the foundation, I still had another job that I was doing besides being a county commissioner. I chose to end that job to give full-time with the foundation. That said, the board asked about the salary of increasing it. That was a decision by our board of directors. They compared and looked at what other presidents and CEOs were getting in the area, from Center of the Arts to Community Hope Center. They came back and made that offer, and that was a board vote. That wasn't something that I came with.
Thank you, Mr. Hawken. I have one last question, but I want to give an opportunity. I don't want to just monopolize the whole time. Mr. Booth, do you have any questions? No. I'm good. Mr. Westheimer? No. And I'll just finish with this because I want a clarification about. So when we compare the relationship between and I think it was Mr. Booth that said that it doesn't always exist, that we have this very strong relationship. Has the Education Foundation been recognized for any awards, or where do they rank in terms of how good of a foundation they are working within their community?
Last time I checked, we were 12th. I'm sorry.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, we were 12th ranked education foundation of all of them. So yes, and third in the state, I believe, and third in the state. So we want measures. We'd like to improve that, and we're trying to do that. It's going to be tough right now with our corporate sponsorship. We know everybody's hurting out there. We already been informed. Tupperware's gonna have to step back a little bit, but we're gonna make that up. We're looking at other areas that are still existing and bringing them in as partnerships.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you.
I just have one last. I just want to ask one last question from the founder. Mr. Tompkins, if you may. And I do appreciate the board allowing me this leeway. I think this is a very important contract for this organization, and so it really does deserve a lot of this time, so that we can put it all in the record. Mr. Tompkins, you're the founder. Can you tell us a little bit what was your intentions with the origins of the Education Foundation and its relationship with the school district?
What the intention when we started the foundation? Carrie mentioned about a 100-year plan. Now, that wasn't a joke, that's serious. We still have a 100-year plan. We do amend it and adjust it and look at it every 5 years and every 1 year. And the 100-year plan hasn't changed since day one. It was to ensure that every student graduate from Osceola County would be ensured of attending a school of higher learning. And that was what our goal was. It's what our goal is. And I think we have come a long way in the years that we've been here now in establishing a large percent that we're ensuring that. I think Dr. Pace is actually a recipient of one of our scholarships, are you not? And there are many teachers in the school district that has our scholarships.
Mr. Tompkins, in 2012, the college going rate of the Osceola.
I'm sorry?
In 2012, the percentage of Osceola high school graduates that went on to college or public university was 39%. Today, we don't have the latest number because there is a lag, but it looks like very probable it's gonna trend to close to between 65 and 70%. What can you tell us about the contributions from the Education Foundation to our initiatives and our efforts to increase that number?
In dollars and cents or in numbers?
You want to tell us what was?
I think that the foundation, because we've become so engaged and involved into the community through the parents, through the teachers, through this district, that we are part of the educational system. That's what I think we're felt like. We provide books, we provide erasers, paper, notebooks, backpacks, clothes. I mean, we provide every essential thing that is needed. We provide your classrooms, or our classrooms, I should say, with essential supplies. Your teachers come to our schools and our foundation offices that you provide us, and we provide them with essential products to put in their classrooms that they need, that they don't have. Otherwise, they would be taking the money out of their pocket and buying them. So because we are such an important part of the educational system in Osceola County, we're known by so many families, so many children. Now we're dealing with second generations. I mean, the students that we provided scholarships for now are teachers, they're now parents, they're working here, and they're raising their children, and they know about us. So I think we're an integral part of the system. When we first started this, I paid all the employees for the foundation for the first 3 years out of my own pocket, just to get things started. Then once we gradually started raising money, then I started easing out and putting my money into programs. And we've grown. Does that help?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, I want to give an opportunity for the other board members. Any questions?
No, good. Thank you for all you've done. We appreciate it.
Yeah, mine was actually the same. I should have said it to you as well, Fred. I said it to Carrie and to you, Tom, as well. Just thank you. I think you guys know this. I mean, we're friends, we're family. None of this is personal for me. And I totally understand the importance of the foundation being here to advocate for what you believe is either right or fair or best for the continued work of the foundation. And so just know my heart. I don't have any disagreement on that. This is for me purely a decision of what I think is in the best interest of the school board, which is what my fiduciary responsibility is, of course, without undermining the value in the partnership and your significant investment over decades and decades to support the work that happens for this district and for this board. So I just want you to hear my heart on that.
Mr. Chairman, I may add, I don't know if everyone is aware of it, but most foundations, education foundations in the state of Florida are adversarial to their school districts. They were not set up to be supporters. They were set up, to be adversaries of you. We made that decision when we started day one. Our goal was very simple. We wanted to be part of the system and work with the system and provide everyone a scholarship, give them the opportunity that no child would not attend a college without the financial means. We would see to that financial resource. And Karen, how many scholarships we do last year? 400.
600,000.
I mean,
I think it's 5 million, over 5 million to date.
and now you take money away? we can fund these other programs, but take the monies out of scholarship funds and put them over in the program. Our fundraising abilities, when we eliminate programs, our fundraising abilities will diminish. It's more, the more we do, the more money we can raise. The less we do, the less money we're gonna raise.
Ms. Castillo.
I don't have questions, I just wanna say.
I'm sorry?
I don't have any questions, just thank you so much for your service. I've been to the closets and the, the stores for our teachers, and I know that's a really integral part, so thank you so much for providing that.
Thank you.
I'm good. I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Tompkins. And I'm almost done. The last thing I want is, I would like to ask some questions of the superintendent briefly. Help me figure this out. I've been on this board since 2012. I cannot register in my memory any time that we've had a disagreement or that we have not worked in total partnership and in concert with the Education Foundation. Would that be your experience as well, Dr. Pace?
Yes.
So, I don't have anything further on discussion.
I don't have any, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I don't have a discussion point, I just have a question. I think, we have two options in front of us. Maybe,
I'm getting to that.
actually, Mr. Booth, yeah,
I'm
I think
getting to
maybe Mr. Booth should.
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Right. So, Mr. Booth,
Mr. Chairman has the floor over here.
I'm taking this by phases. I hope it's clear. So, okay, so now we're going into that part, and
I've got an option 3. I'll put it out there without making a motion if you'd like me to.
No, you don't make a motion. Tell us what the option 3 is.
Okay, how about this?
I'm sorry, I don't.
No,
I don't want to give the wrong impression, guys. I just want to.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll put an option 3 out there. Here's what I'll say. I'll say let's continue the 120 this year and for 2 more years. And at the end of that 3rd year, just like we're doing now, you come forward and hopefully continue that relationship at the 120 beyond. I think that's fair.
May I respond to your option 3?
Sure.
Here's what I want to talk to Dr. Pace about, because she made the original, request for approval on option 1. And I just want to and then I see this perpetual word, and I think a lot has been said, and we should. So basically, this is a contract that what you mean by perpetual, it's basically a contract that doesn't have an end date.
Yeah.
However.
Could I clarify one issue?
Go.
The agreement provides that either the foundation or the school board can end the agreement on an annual basis.
And so because it has that word.
Perpetual, it doesn't have to come back to the board unless the board decides either to modify it or say we're not renewing.
Mr. Cooperbacher, now we're gonna have a discussion between us two. Because it has that language in the contract, then shouldn't there at least be some type of review to say, look, we have this is the end of the year, does anybody wanna go ahead and propose some kind of change? I mean, maybe that hasn't happened,
I
but
agree
isn't
with
that?
Mr. Thacker's position. This was the existing agreement that existed. We can add in a thing that says every, pick a date, every year annually, there is going to be a report from the superintendent, and the board will decide whether they continue in it or don't continue it. And I wouldn't pick a date right now till we coordinate with the foundation, when do they do their budgets?
And speaking about that, Mr. Cooperbacher, from your experience, it's a 1-year review, really what normally happens. I believe that for organizational purposes and planning, don't contracts want to have a review every 3 years or something like that?
Your contracts, we generally have 3-year with 2 1-year options, but they are, depending upon the nature of the contract, reviewed and looked at annually.
And now
For
speaking to Mr. Booth's proposal, it doesn't seem too much different of what we're talking about right here. Am I correct?
Will this come back annually is, I guess, would be a question for me. Or it will not, it will just.
You could say, we're deciding on a 3-year thing with the provision we could get out annually and ask the superintendent to report back, X month of every year on the status of the relationship. And the board can decide they're gonna continue with doing nothing, or they could say, no, we don't wanna continue the agreement.
But my legal question, Frank,
Yeah.
Mr. Cooperbacher, is whether or not option one allows us to administer this contract in that manner.
Yes, but I'd have the board, if they approved option one, simply add Mr. Thacker's recommendation that Dr. Pace pick the month that coordinates and advise the board what month it will be, then that a report is given that month.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, does that kind of fit what your
Sure,
intent,
sure.
what your intent is?
Yes, that would be the intent.
Okay.
Well, I fear what Mr. Thacker said. You don't wanna throw this out and it never comes back. You want
this will-
boards going forward to make sure you maintain a good relationship, that they still come in and say, this is what we're doing with the funds that we have.
Very good.
And Dr. Pace, or whoever the superintendent is in the future, says, yes, we have a good relationship, yes, the funds are being used correctly, the foundation comes in, and everybody, and I think that actually makes the relationship stronger.
We trust, I trust these people completely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how long those four people could not be there.
Right.
Or could be there.
Let me just
That's
pause.
my concern.
Let me just pause.
Perpetual turns, I couldn't
I don't like the
believe
word
it is
perpetual.
Yeah, I don't,
So
And not just this, on anything.
it
Mr.
sounds like,
100 years.
Yeah.
It sounds like we would come to an agreement if we just amended option one, take out perpetual and maybe have a review. We have a review for all of our contracts and agreements of 1 year with option 2 and 3. I don't understand why that's not possible here. I feel like that's what everybody else is saying, so that's what I would be in favor of. I think that would be a clear
But before,
cut, yes.
I would like to go ahead and, like I said, call one more. Mr. Weiser, I know that you're patient. I want to give you time to chime in on this discussion.
Sure. Bear in mind, as with anything, the superintendent's job is to make a recommendation. It's this job to make decisions.
Yes.
There could be 14 options on here, there could be one option on here. We can do whatever we want.
Yes.
We're the board, we make those decisions, we own those decisions. I have an issue with the fact that we're sitting here again today having almost the exact same conversation we had 3 years ago and then going, oh, well, here's a novel idea, we could do another 3-year thing. That's what got us here in the first place. The perpetual part is the biggest issue, and Mr. Thacker, I think I'm 100% on the same page with you on that, I think. As I said earlier, maintaining the current funding level for the foundation for this year is not even a question, right? I don't think any board member is sitting here saying, change where we are today, impact your budget, reduce program, nothing like that. If we landed at a place where we said $120,000 this year, with a 1-year contract to be renewed and reviewed annually, with the report on the effectiveness of programs and the maintenance of the relationship for an annual renewal under consideration of the board by X date every year, that's fine. We could land there. As far as the question about what date that is, I mean, we've got the top leaders of the foundation in the room. Understanding when they do their budget cycle is as simple as asking one question to add on to the many questions that have already been asked. That's not hard. We can button this up tonight very simply with the simple question, when do you guys do your budget? When would you need us to make a decision on what we want to do in the next year? And go from there. As I said earlier, I'm not voting for 1-year perpetual agreement for anybody, period. I mean, 3-year perpetual, whatever it was, for anybody. So that's where I stand. Like I said earlier, I can amend my position through this. I'm here to be open and to learn and to adapt, but we've got to land in the right place.
Right.
I think we've had enough opportunity to really hash out and hear each other, share our reasoning, ask for input of the folks that are the most affected by this decision that we're making and that we're contemplating. At this point, I'm satisfied. My approach to this is to call to question the option 1 and see if we need an option 2 after we get a result on that. So with that said,
Question option 1, or I think,
Which
do we
is,
want to amend the
well,
that's the
let me
language
make
that's-
something clear, Ms. Castillo, and for the benefit of the rest of the board. When I was speaking with Mr. Gruppenbacher was exactly to deal with the contractual language, my question was whether the intent of Mr. Booth and Mr. Thacker can be carried out with the option one as is stated. The board attorney replied that it would behoove of us to add an addendum to clarify that review, correct?
At a minimum, if you're gonna do the contract for more than a year, I would add in an annual review.
I will not support it as a perpetual agreement.
So it won't be a perpetual agreement. because it could-
I think we need to state that that's gonna be taken out, otherwise we're literally gonna land nowhere.
Dr. Pace, is the word perpetual anywhere in the contract? I don't-
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes.
Then we need to amend the contract.
You could do this.
Why-
You could
why
approve it as,
Is it in there?
make it very simple. We're approving the agreement for another year, 120, and then it's gotta come back again. And it's very clean at that.
I'd like to make a motion. Are we allowed to make motions yet?
On option,
Question.
You told me no
you wanna make-
twice.
I'm calling for a motion, Mr. Thacker, to answer your question, I'm calling for a motion on option one, and if you have an amendment,
That is not my
You
motion
can
is not
proceed.
option one. My motion is a 3-year agreement at $120,000 a year. And we go, they do need we should do. We need the annual, what you've done with the money and how's the construction pipeline, we need to do whatever the other one, a culinary pipeline. The 120 may go up, I don't know. But I can't live with forever, because you know how it is, Fred, things will get, forever turns into forever, because in 8 years, nobody remembers, it just kind of happens.
so Mr. Thacker, again, for clarification, your motion is for a 3-year, 120 a year agreement with a yearly review. And then it would have to come up before the board for to be voted again for another 3 years or whatever they want at that point, correct?
Whoever the board is could do 20 years or 1 year.
All right.
Or nothing.
Okay, does anyone want
I tried to make that exact motion about an hour ago.
I know. I would have seconded it.
So then, do you have a?
Second.
All right, so, okay, so, because it follows the spirit of option one, and I don't believe that I think that this is just enhancing option one in order, as Mr. Booth just said, to strengthen, make the relationship better, clarify, give everyone at least security and of knowing what's going to happen in the future. I am in support of this motion. I'm gonna hold it up for further discussion before I actually ask for a vote.
This is 120 a year for 3 years, but it will be reviewed annually, as any contract with the school district is, essentially. And then the next school board can make their decision beyond that.
That's your idea, Mr. Booth.
Well, I think that's what I
That
wanna
was
make
my
sure that's
motion.
what we're voting.
That is the
We're
motion.
just confirming
Let me go
what
down.
we're doing.
Ms. Castillo, do you have any discussion or questions or anything further before I call on the vote?
I don't have any questions. I think this is exactly what everybody wanted, so
Absolutely.
we can
need to-
vote.
I need to give an opportunity to
Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
I want, Mr. Weiser, you have the floor.
Yeah, my only clarification, Clarence, is 3-year contract, 120 with an annual review, and at that review, if the board determines that the partnership is not providing the value that they want at that time, the contract or the dollar amount could be terminated. That's the intent of your motion.
Yeah, let's just say y'all came up with
I think
10
that's
programs
correct.
or, I can't even think of it.
The purpose
Some
of the review,
ridiculous.
So they'll put it on the record.
No, we're not doing that. I mean, I don't think that'll happen. I also don't know that y'all will all be here in 2 years, or 3 years.
So, Mr. Thacker, as to Mr. Weiser's, concern, what was your response?
As with any contract, we would have a termination clause.
So you're in agreement with my statement?
Yes.
That that's the intent of your motion?
Yes.
All right, so anything further from Mr. Thacker on this issue? If I call her vote, Ms. Castillo, you're fine?
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine. Mr. Weiser, final words. Mr. Booth?
Are we voting?
Yes, we are. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Against, state nay.
Nay.
Vote passes 4-1.
Mr. Sons, just for clarification, did you vote on option 1 or 2, or did
No,
we
we
make
made our
our
own
own
option.
Made our own option.
Created our own.
Franco clarify.
Council
for you.
knows what the option,
Yeah,
what the,
council
Thank you.
will,
whatever.
will clarify for your
Agreement
minutes so
for the
that it's
chair's
properly
signature.
reflected. Thank you very much for
Thanks, guys.
your time and for your attention.
We appreciate you all, thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
We appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Bring us now to item number 14, legal questions. Mr. Cooper.
No reports.
Superintendent update, which is on 15.
Karen Soto, if I may, could I approach the podium to go over some information about our back-to-school plan?
Yes, you may.
Just because of our technical issues, I think might be better.
You may that please. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, board members and members of the community. I just wanted to provide a brief update about our back-to-school plan and then ask your consideration of an alternative calendar. As of this evening at 5 p.m., we're up to now 50% of our families have responded to our survey. Our principals and assistant principals and leadership teams at the schools and at the district stand prepared to start after the close of business tomorrow to start following up with families who we may not have heard from. They'll also be spending the next couple of weeks following up with staff members about where we are with the master schedule. We know that flexibility and adaptability is going to be critically important. Of the 50,
Quick question, is this a survey or is this an opinion survey or are they locking in?
they are locking in. This is actually our original survey at the beginning of the summer was your generic survey. Anybody and everybody could have gone in and apply and submitted an answer 1 time, 5 times, 10 times. This is actually tied to a student ID, student grade level, student name, address, all of those types of things. As of right now, we're up to 6% choosing Osceola Virtual School, 43% choosing digital, and 51% electing to continue or start the year with face-to-face instruction. And that's our students and our families. As you know, we launched a communication plan immediately after your board meeting on June the 30th. We've continued to use Let's Talk, email, phone calls. Our website is kept up to date with frequently asked questions. We had a Facebook Live session last week dedicated to parent questions, and we'll be doing the same thing tomorrow with staff questions. I can tell you that we have way more staff questions than we can cover in an hour, but most of them are repetitive and we'll be able to, I think, address the questions that are out there. And then we're also following up individually with emails as appropriate. So in terms of that, over the next couple of weeks, we will be making adjustments in master schedules and assignments and those types of things to get everybody back to work. We do understand, and I want to make clear tonight on the record, we've said before, that not every single option can be offered digitally in option 2. You know, we're certainly trying, but with our smaller school programs, such as the professional and technical high school, with OTEC and some of our CTE classes, which rely and depend on that hands-on learning experience in order to earn the industry certification that our students are seeking to join the workforce. NeoCity, OXA certainly provides some challenges. We're looking at technology to be as adaptable as we can. We'll be asking teachers in some of those programs if they are willing to provide instruction both digitally and face-to-face asynchronously, or in other words, at the same time. We believe we have the equipment in place to help make that happen, but we also know that that's an additional burden for teachers. It would not be more students. That doesn't mean they would have 40 students in a class period if they're only supposed to have 20 or 25, but it does mean still that there's that additional work. So we're working with OCEA and our teachers and our staff members to look at extra period supplements for teachers who are willing to take on that particular road. I also do have some concern that parents may not yet necessarily understand the true expectations of digital learning, which is a regular school day, 7.5 hours, or 7 hours, 7.5 hours for our staff, but about 7 hours for our students, including their lunch and recess time, that parents would be committed their students to engage in deeply throughout the day. It's very, very different than what we did in the spring, the Learning Digital Light piece. Our research and accountability team has completed an equity study in which we really look deeply across our subgroups at where we are with proficiency, graduation rate. We've learned that VPK enrollment is a tremendous predictor in terms of student success all the way down the road to graduation. We've learned that the AVID program has great outcomes for kids all the way down the road to graduation. We've also learned that attendance and discipline referrals play a significant role. But we've also identified that for our Black students, our Hispanic students, our exceptional student education students, and our ELL students, our English language learners, there was a greater struggle in the spring with digital learning than for some of our other student populations. And we're absolutely committed to making sure that we start immediately to close those achievement gaps. That being said, we've also heard a lot from our community in terms of considerations and concerns, particularly as the COVID data has continued to increase in our community, not just at the state level, but here in Osceola County. I again spoke with the Department of Health today. We're looking at both the number of cases every day, but also that positivity rate. But it's also important that you look at the number of test results that have come in, because there is still a backlog, and every once in a while we get a huge spike in cases, but that's also because there was a huge dump of data into the system, so that the cases went up even though we might have had those test results up to even a week and a half ago. So those are things that we're continuing to watch, and I have regular calls with Bianca McCluskey, our local administrator at the Department of Health, to make sure we're keeping our eye and our pulse on that particular information as we bring forward what we would make as recommendations. So one of the things that, as we've listened to feedback from our community members and collaborated with leaders in our neighboring districts and analyzing this data, we've had many requests come in to consider pushing back the beginning of the school year for a short time, to allow us to continue to monitor the data and work toward improvements in both the number of cases and the positivity rate. My concern, and as opposed to not just jumping into this as a recommendation from the beginning, has always been twofold. Number one, we have over 6,000 employees who are teachers, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, 9 and 10-month employees who don't work in the summer, but who are ready to come back to school in August and expect and have budgeted for that first paycheck. Many of those in two-parent homes or two families, the other staff member may already be out of work, because in Osceola County we have over a 31% unemployment rate. So we know that folks are looking to that first paycheck to pay the mortgage, pay the rent, buy the groceries, make the car payment, take care of those basic family needs that our employees look forward to. But we also know that we have parents and guardians for the students that we serve who are eager to go back to work and who count on us to have school in session so that their students have a safe place for children to go, to learn, to enjoy nutritious meals, and to engage with their peers. So, but this afternoon, I worked with our district leadership team, and we have a draft calendar for your consideration. Each of you have a copy of it at your seat. It's in blue. That would allow us to shift the start date for students, as it says on the board, to August the 24th. Students were originally scheduled to return on August the 10th. This would allow us 2 more weeks in order to be able to engage in this safely. We are able to do this without negatively impacting the paychecks of our employees who are preparing to come back to work. Our teachers, our VPK paras and leads, our pre-K ESE staff members, IEP assistants, lab assistants, child development assistants, all the folks on that common calendar would, instead of returning to work on August the 3rd, come on August the 10th. But instead of having 1 week of pre-planning, we would provide 2 weeks of pre-planning. We had already planned to have a day specifically dedicated to safety protocols. We also believe that it would be important to have a day specifically dedicated to our instructional continuity plan that does prepare for a shift to all digital should we have to go there if things don't get better. But they would still have their first paycheck on the originally scheduled instructional pay run on August the 19th. For another group of employees, our bus drivers, another key employee group, they were originally scheduled to return on July the 27th for their practice runs and then have a gap in employment before school started on August the 10th. We would instead invite them in on August the 10th. They would have their regular 4 days of practice runs as well as a day dedicated to a new safety protocol, so they would work that full week. They would have the next week off, but then return ready to drive for the return of students on Monday, August the 24th. And we would be able to honor their paycheck, which was originally scheduled to run on August the 14th, so that would be unchanged. And then the other group of our 9 and 10-month employees who were typically scheduled to return on August the 17th and receive their first paycheck on August the 19th. They were originally scheduled to return earlier than that. I'm not sure exactly the date, but they would return on August the 17th, receive their first regular paycheck on August the 21st, just 2 days beyond their currently scheduled payday. This would require a pretty significant adjustment to the calendar. There would be no teacher work days between each 9 weeks grading period throughout the school year. Instead, we would move those days, front load those into pre-planning. We know that our teachers are using digital grade books. Those grades are often almost done, but it would require an adjustment in protocols and procedures, and students wouldn't have that day off, a student holiday in between. However, Thanksgiving break, winter break, spring break would remain as scheduled, barring, of course, a school closure situation caused by, God forbid, a hurricane or some other natural disaster. The last 4 days of the school year, June 1st through the 4th, would be designated specifically for makeup days or instructional professional development days to give us a chance to front load the curriculum for the upcoming school year and prepare for an active summer of what we hope will be face-to-face learning once we have a COVID vaccine underway and our community can get back to a somewhat sense of normal. Again, and to address the needs of our parents who may be needing that childcare in order to go back to work, we would be working with our extended learning team. They have been providing safely extended learning camps since June. They could continue that for 2 additional weeks to give parents that opportunity for kids to have a safe place to go, bump up some learning as we prepare for the school year before now in August the 24th. So that is our recommendation, board members, that you would consider adopting the alternative calendar for the upcoming school year, with the understanding, of course, that we'll continue to monitor the data. But this is the last possible date that we can start school without impacting our employees' pay schedules. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Thacker, let me just go down the list.
Dr. Pace, if we approve the calendar tonight, which I'm assuming there's still, if something blows apart between here and on August 23rd, we could adjust.
Absolutely, you can adjust it at any time. You have another board meeting on July the 28th. I'll provide an update for you of where we are at that time. And then we would have another board meeting early in August. Right.
Recommendation here with that understanding that it's kind of etched in stone, sort of.
Everything's kind of etched in stone, sort of, right now.
Thank you, Ms. Thacker. Let me allow the other board members an opportunity, Ms. Castillo.
Yeah, can I ask questions that are unrelated to the calendar?
Of course.
And Board, I apologize, I know.
Well, it's up to the chairman.
This isn't supposed to be a question and answer, but I did have questions. I talked to a lot of parents and I promised that I was going to bring some questions to the board. So, first of all, thank you for this, because I know this is definitely going to be a little bit of a relief, especially for the many teachers that I've talked to who are really, really concerned about how we're going to create all of this change. So thank you for being flexible. I really appreciate that, and I know how difficult it is to create these plans for an entire organization. This is probably not possible, but I am going to ask on behalf of a parent who called me today frantic because she did not know that tomorrow was a deadline to make a choice for her kindergartner. And I understand that we need to have these plans in place as early as possible in order to create master plans. Is there any possible way that can be extended, the deadline for some of those parents? Or, I know it's a crazy question, but.
Well, we know that there are some parents, I mean, obviously we're now 50%, which I'm thrilled with in terms of our survey results. But this will allow even our school administrators teams, who I'm gonna be honest, were anxious about all that I was asking them to do in a matter of 2 weeks to prepare for teachers to return on August the 3rd, to give them a little bit more time so we can reach out and have that personal connection with parents and students who either A, missed the memo that this was an important decision that we needed to have now, or that may have changed their mind, or may still have some questions that have been unanswered. So what I would tell that parent to do is to call the school where their child is expected to go, and someone there will be able to walk through the process, take record of the choice that they're going to make, and we'll be following up with all the others. We need to close the survey so I can lock it down and get the information out to our school teams and our guidance counselors, and they can really start digging in on making those schedule adjustments. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be looking and asking parents who haven't responded, how can we help you? What's your choice?
I understand, so I'll get in contact with her as well. The other question that I had, and I think you answered this in your Facebook Live, thank you for doing that, by the way, reaching people in as many ways as possible. With regards to the extracurricular activities, specifically, I have a lot of parents who want to choose option 2 for their safety, but they have children who are doing band, for example, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be a way to do that. Is there a way for for students to do option 2 and still participate in some of those? I know the answer because I watched your Facebook Live, but if you can go ahead and just clarify for me.
We have always provided flexible schedules for some students and parents, but we have to work those out individually, and we have to make sure that it's gonna work. Does the student have transportation at the appropriate time? Is there somebody to supervise the student at other times? You know, all of those things come into play. We do have a plan now that we have worked out with our band directors and our ROTC instructors to have a safe camp prior to school like they always have, but we will not be using instruments at this point in time. They instead will just be doing the drills that they would do for a marching band, typical band camp. Only the drummers or the percussionists will have their instruments in order to keep the beat, and they'll each have their own individual sticks or, forgive me, but whatever you call the other things that they use in order to play the percussion instruments. Because we are still working with state and local organizations on what is the safest way to return to band. You know, but the same is true, we have our conditioning camps going on for sports. FHSAA is still looking at whether or not we're gonna push out some seasons, not push out some seasons. So all of those things are still in flux, but we're working with them, and we'll work with things on a case by case basis. I'm just gonna be honest, as a former parent of kids who were highly involved in athletics and other programs at the schools, I'm not sure how it's not safe to come for English and it's safe to come for football practice. But we are gonna work with parents and their fears and help to respect that.
Of course. And then, I think this is my final question. Again, I apologize, board, for asking so many questions. With regards to, clearly, right, we're in a health crisis. We are in the middle of a pandemic, maybe in the middle, we don't really know, right? I know that we are communicating with parents as well as we can. I see that. I see where the information is, but I also understand, you know, taking my board member hat off and thinking as a parent who has many concerns, that sometimes more information might be better than less information, right? I understand why and how we are communicating with parents with regards to positive cases if we have them, as well as contact tracing. Can you walk me through the process of connecting with parents and students who have been in contact if and when, and we know that it has happened, somebody is positive for COVID?
That has been a significant question, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer as to exactly how that communication happens, because we really do truly look at almost every situation individually based on the guidance that we've received both from the CDC and the local Department of Health. So we start asking questions like, was the contact with someone who was COVID a direct contact? Mr. Booth is positive, I'm in Mr. Booth's class. Or I had lunch with Mr. Booth after he was positive, or whatever. Okay, that's a direct contact. However, if Mr. Booth's wife or sister is positive, he's been around her, but he doesn't have any symptoms, isn't positive, and I had lunch with Mr. Booth or was in Mr. Booth's classmate, that's indirect contact. We have to look at how much exposure there was in terms of the length of time. We have to look at, was social distancing in place? Were people wearing their facial coverings and staying apart from each other? Or, as we've discovered happened in one particular setting, was a group of people all sitting together at lunchtime, potentially sharing snacks and drinks, and not wearing masks and not practicing social distancing. You know, so those are the types of things that we look at. We also look at the level of contact and exposure. So were only adults interacting with these people? Have kids been involved? In the event that we have an elementary school 3rd grade class, Mr. Thacker's the teacher. Ms. Castillo and Mr. Soto and Mr. Weissire have been in that class every day since the beginning of school. Mr. Thacker doesn't feel sick, but then, you know, he's at work on Monday. Tuesday, he calls in because he doesn't really feel well. We're starting to ask some questions. He goes for a test on Tuesday. Chances are very good at that point in time, we would quarantine the class. Because they've had direct contact with Mr. Thacker until we get a negative test result back, or until they've had a negative test, okay? But it's not just about quarantining. If somebody has to be quarantined, but they aren't sick, we'll switch them into digital learning. We'll ask the teacher if they want to switch into digital teaching until we kind of work through that process. And there's specific guidance about how the extent of the contact and whether it's a 10-day quarantine or 14-day quarantine after a negative test. So while I would love to say there's one answer for all of these things, they're not. But we have 3 dedicated leadership team members who've worked with the Department of Health and continue to work with them on these cases. If we don't know the answer, we're gonna follow up in terms of contact tracing. They will be the ones who tell us you need to quarantine a class, you need to quarantine a school, okay? Or somewhere in between. And we will be following up. We already have prepared communication for direct contact, indirect contact. We also have dedicated staff members who, when those kinds of things happen, we don't just send the letter home in the backpack. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna make individual attempts to reach out to each and every family, either via remind, email, or a phone call. Particularly if we have concerns about direct contact and we need to send somebody for testing or to their medical provider before they come in. The other question, if I may, Chairman Soto, with your permission, that has come up a lot is about testing. So far, rapid testing has not been available through our health department. However, in working with Kenneth Aldridge with our Center for Employee Health and Rosen Care, he has connected Lauren, Sarah, and I with a potential resource for rapid testing that we could use specifically for our employees in the event of a situation like this, or potentially even students. So we're setting up a call with Dr. Shaw in the next couple of days, so hopefully before our next board meeting, I would have some answers for you about our access to rapid testing. I mean, I hope no one's offended by this, but if the NBA can test their players every day, I believe school employees ought to be able to have access to rapid testing. And, you know, Mr. Thacker and I have talked about the fact that it may be a cost, and so it'd be something I'd have to bring back to the board. But I think that is something seriously to consider, because we're saying our employees, every single one of us is an essential employee. We need to be able to have access to that type of medical help.
I do have one more thing, I apologize. Actually, I don't apologize. These are the questions that I have, so, and you don't have to answer this right now. I just want you to know that I have been in deep conversations with people, not just in my district. I had a parent from a private school call me on the way over here. Don't know how people are getting my number. It's totally fine. I wanna talk to everybody, but the ask isn't so much about quarantining a class or about contact tracing. The ask is really, I wanna know if somebody at my child's school has tested positive, period. I understand that there are HIPAA, we have to abide by the law. I totally understand that. Don't have to answer this right now. I don't know if this is a conversation we need to have at a later time or if we can answer now. But the ask that I'm getting from my parents is, I wanna know if somebody tests positive. I don't know if that's possible. If it's not possible, please tell me why. But this is just what I'm being asked to communicate.
As
Yes,
to that
please.
question, I can tell you right now, the school board, there's a gob of emails of all of us dealing with the state going back and forth.
Yes,
We are vetting that right now. For example, if Johnny gets it,
yes,
I was gonna be talking with Dr. Pace about the fact we gotta confirm, if we have to do an agreement, we'll do it, that the health department will notify her Johnny Smith in classroom 3 got it.
yes.
There's already people saying, no, they have no right to tell anybody. Well, I don't agree with that. I can tell you that right now, because I think HIPAA kind of takes a second step behind the health and welfare of people right now. Now, you wouldn't say which child got it. You would just say a child has it. We're vetting through just how much can be said and exchanged, and we'll have that back for you
Okay.
well in advance
So
to go
just
over
so that
that.
I understand, so I can get back to
Right.
the folks who have asked me, we are vetting that based on communication that you're having with the state, is that correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
I think Dr. Pace put it very well. To the extent in consultation with the health department, it is identified that these students may have been at risk.
Right,
We're surely gonna make sure
of
those
course,
families are notified,
yes,
type thing. So these questions are, we already have a group saying you can't take temperatures.
oh,
All right, I mean, it's all over the place.
okay,
And we're vetting through our rights, school districts, to say no, to protect everybody. We can require temperatures, go to court to try and stop us, but it's every little angle. I wanted to add one thing,
yes,
if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
In the event of disclosure, because I know the public's watching this, and the public that's here. You all, and Dr. Pace have been ordered by the state of Florida to reopen these schools. This is not a voluntary decision on the part of the board to go, well, we think it's okay to reopen. And when I hear people criticizing school boards, or which I've heard not only here but elsewhere, it's like, wait a second. They're obligated to do this. Now, I think the only time I would tell you right now, we may take a different position, is if the health department said to Dr. Pace, don't open that school or don't open, you got a whole different game.
Yes.
Right? But you've been ordered to do it. You've been ordered to do it in a certain way, and some people say, why don't you just say no to the state? The state controls the purse strings, and they've made it pretty clear they'll deal with that. Washington DeVos has made it pretty clear she would look at withholding federal money, which is critical for your ESE programs. So I just think the public needs to understand the depth of the work that this board and superintendent are doing to ensure their safety in implementing an order that they were placed under.
Yes, thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr.
I know
Chairman.
those were kind of tricky questions, but yes.
Well, Ms. Castillo, those were very insightful questions that you chose to ask the superintendent. Really covered a lot of the things that I also wanted to ask, which were mostly focused on what are going to be our testing protocols. I believe that that is a work in progress.
It is.
That you're working on. I believe that this new calendar is going to be giving you much needed opportunity to get that in place. I expect that we'll also have a plan, a protocol as to how to deal with giving support to students or staff that may become ill from being in our facilities. And that all of that is going to be put into a budget that probably would need to come before us for reconsider, because it's going to be some funding questions to what we're doing to get our schools ready for the 24th, correct?
Yes, sir. We have been relying on the idea that FEMA dollars could be used for reimbursement for most of the COVID supplies that we've had, but we may be having to shift some of that into the COVID budget, but we're prepared to do that. But currently, we have ordered, as we've said earlier, 5 masks for every student, every staff member. We have additional masks that have been provided by the EOC and by the state for staff members. We have ordered ample supplies of hand sanitizer, soap, paper towels, decals for the floors and tables and chairs to identify marking systems, hallways to identify directional pathways, temperature thermometers, just a variety of things like that to help us support and prepare for safety in our schools, electrostatic sprayers, additional cleaning supplies, a bottle of spray for every classroom and paper towels for every classroom. We have a new product that's been found to help to prevent adherence to hard surfaces of bacteria that will last for a 90-day period. We're going to be spraying all of our hard surfaces, including playground equipment for some of those. We've tasked our principals with looking at their campuses, their schedules for things like recess. Maybe half of 3rd grade does inside recess today, half of 3rd grade does outside recess. You know, there are a variety of things that we're continuing to work with, but you know, I asked for your consideration for this adjustment to the calendar because it not only allows us to assess the data, continue to monitor the COVID situation, help to calm some of the fears of our parents, our students, our staff members, but also to give us a little bit more time to continue problem solving about these things that we may not even have thought of yet.
Thank you, Dr. Pace.
I would want to add one thing, only because the press can write stories that confuse people. Counties like Dade County, the governor made it very clear yesterday, different counties may be doing things differently. Like there's one county saying as long as we're in phase 1, we're only going virtual. All right, now they're gonna have to work with the state on that. But, so it's really, you may see some odd things in the media, but it's not a broad statement that we don't have an order telling us anything different right now.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Kuchenbacher. I want to ask a question that's slightly off topic though, but it was really asked of me, and you brought it up actually in your presentation, which is a lot of the CTE programs are not, I guess that they haven't updated or they haven't gotten to the question as to whether they can certify that that course of study on a virtual basis, how are we working to see whether we can talk to those agencies and that they can make that adjustment so that our students that want to finish up that CTE program online can be certified?
As a school district, we were granted a special waiver in the spring for digital learning for some of those hands-on CTE programs, particularly at our technical college. However, keep in mind that all summer we've been bringing in adults and students in small groups in order to allow them to get the hands-on experience that is absolutely required for certification in those programs. I mean, we're talking about things like phlebotomy. I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody checking my blood at the Quest Diagnostic Lab who hasn't had an opportunity to practice on people other than me.
So what
Okay.
we're doing for those situations.
I
is
mean,
creating
and those are the
environment-
types of situations that we're talking about, you know, fixing my car. I wanna make sure that you've actually practiced this before you're the one responsible for helping me get off the side of the road. So we're working with those kinds of situations, but I cannot commit to you that we'll be able to offer all of those courses digitally. We will have alternative electives for kids who wanna take other things.
Base, I think it's reasonable to at least expect our parents to understand that there are going to be some programs that will not be certified due to the current conditions that we're under. But those that can, we're working on getting
Yes.
those waived. Understood. Thank you very much for that. I don't have anything further. Mr. Whiteside.
Thank you, Chairman. Superintendent, I'll be voting in favor of the recommendation. I want to go back and provide some framework, which I think is really important. And you mentioned something in your comments in the presentation that's really important as well. First of all, last school board meeting, this board made it very clear that our decision was made based on the information we had available at that time, and that the decision would be reviewed, analyzed, and reconsidered as needed by the superintendent and by the school board. And so we set in motion 2 weeks ago the landscape to be able to do exactly what we're doing today. And this is how this board and this district has always operated. It's looking at information and data, being honest, fair, and objective about how we review it, and making the tough decisions that we think are in the best interest of the institution as a whole and all the many pieces, parts, and players that it impacts. When I say the pieces, parts, and players, we have to remember, and you touched on this. Number one, school needs to open. Kids need to learn. There are serious academic concerns that will manifest themselves in the not too distant future if we do not open school. So our community needs to understand, as much as we are trying to do at this time to provide 3 very viable options and to extend the opening of school, school will open. That will happen. Number 2, we have done everything we can in this instance to try to do as much good as we can in maintaining the financial needs of our employees. And that's significant. The fact that we're able to accomplish the learning hour requirements of the state, the needs of our community, the responsiveness to the concerns, and the awareness to the financial implications that could impact our employees if we didn't open, this is exactly, again, what this board and the superintendent always does. It's going to be very important for people to understand, because I could sit here today, by the way, as I know all of you could, and for as many people that say I'm concerned or I'm scared or I'm worried, which is fair, I have just as many people saying, open, I'm ready, let's send them to school. And we have to understand that, and I'll speak only for myself in this, I don't make decisions based upon, you know, the loudest view or the political grandstanding or the, you know, look at me and what I have to say. That's not relevant. This board has to make decisions based upon what we think is in the best interest of the whole. There's a key piece here. We're providing 2 additional weeks of learning opportunity for students through our camp programs. There's another part of this, and you mentioned a number that's really important, which is our unemployment rate. We're the largest employer in the county. Beyond that, we impact, Mr. Thacker used a number a couple meetings ago, with the amount of people that we impact with every decision, because it's not just the 71,000 kids, but it's their parents and the workplaces that they have to go to. School opening up is a vital component of this community being able to function. It's going to prove to be a vital component of people being able to go back to work and ensure that they have the livelihood needed to sustain their family financially. And the idea or expectation that may exist somewhere in the ether that somehow we don't have to go back to work or we can just delay and extend, that's not real. We've already printed $5 trillion that we don't have in this country. We can't print another $5 trillion. It's just not real. And when our country realizes the financial impacts of that down the road and having to make up for that and deal with inflationary costs that are going to impact all of us, it's going to be really important for people to understand that when we make these type of decisions, we have to not just think about today and what's happening, we have to think about tomorrow. When we think about the economic impact, the funding of this school district is directly tied to the economic impact. Depending on how deep of an economic downturn is realized in our local or our state or even our national economy will absolutely have an impact on what happens to this school district in the out years when it comes to funding and allocations and programs and salaries and health benefits and all those type of things. So I say that to say, again, I support the recommendation. You and I have had numerous conversations, even just today, about this. We're doing everything that we can. We will do everything we can, as you shared, to provide as safe as an environment as we can. Our community has to understand, though, education is recognized as one of our cornerstones of our community, of our country, of economic viability, of advancement, of change, and school does need to get back in session at some point very, very soon. So I don't want our community to hear this and go, oh, well, the board decided August 24th. Well, let's just ask for another 2 or 3 weeks. My message is going to be clear. We're making the decision we can make today, but everybody has to understand at some point in the not too distant future, school will be open. We provided 3 very healthy options for families to pick from. If they don't feel safe, then keep your kids at home and do distance or sign up for virtual. If you do feel safe, we're going to do everything we can to mitigate the health risks in our schools. Superintendent, our board member Booth said at the beginning of the meeting just how difficult of a job you have, and we all know that. And Ricky, your comments were so on point. I know you're laboring and toiling to figure out how to make these decisions and bring the right recommendations. And I have tremendous respect for what it is you are carrying on your shoulders as a superintendent of one of the largest districts in the nation. People don't understand that, just how big we really are. And you're doing great work. This board supports you, and our community supports you. And you should know that the entire community understands how important of a job you're really doing on behalf of all of our constituents in Osceola County. So thank you.
Was it my turn?
Yes, sir.
Wow, Tim summed up a lot of the things that I was gonna say and did a lot better than I'd probably do anyway, so I'm glad you did that, and thank you, Mr. Weiser. I will share this. I think we also live in different communities a little bit as far as the districts, because I can tell, I don't know the numbers, you may know the numbers. We're talking about 51% capacity. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say in District 5, it's probably higher than that. In District 5, many of my constituents are calling me going, when's school gonna open back up? I'm ready for school to open back up. And just let me clarify, I'm a parent of 3, and I'm a spouse of an employee, a teacher in this district. You know, and to say there's not some reservations and some hesitations and what's it gonna look like, we're all there. But Mr. Weisshire said it right. School is going to open up and has to really it's an essential function of this community. Just to look at the numbers, because some of the loudest voices I'm hearing, 93% of the folks have chosen either go to school or, hey, I'm gonna hold out for a little bit, which is essentially what option 2 is. Hey, I just wanna see what this looks like for a month or 2, and then I'll calm my nerves a little bit. 93% of our community has selected those options. And yet, what we hear on the media and socially and here and everywhere is from the 7%. And actually probably not even them, it's even less than that. So we have to understand, I think the community needs to understand, thank you, Mr. Weishaler, the community needs to understand, this is what they want. School open is what they want, and I think we've got to come up, and you've done a fantastic job, your staff has done a fantastic job, come up with the best way to mitigate those risks face to face, to still have learning happen distance-wise, providing those opportunities to come back when those parents feel safe, to keep our teachers safe, and then to provide that virtual option for what percent of our students were Osceola virtual anyway?
Like 2 to 3%.
2
This
to
is
3. So now we're taking that
significantly
from
more.
2 to 3 to 7. So really, a lot of what we're hearing is not what the truth. The truth is, most parents, I know in my community, it's about half and half, which goes with these numbers, right? That I've talked to. Yeah, I want my kid to go back to school. I'm ready for it to happen, or I just want to check it out for a month or so, and then I'm going to send them back. So I think it's our job to make sure that happens and to make sure it happens in a safe way. You've done a fantastic job, and thank you, Mr. Krumpenbacher. I would dispute a little bit that the state has ultimate authority to tell us that we have to open, but you're exactly right, and I think people out that are watching need to know that these checks that teachers have been getting and bus drivers have been getting when buses weren't running, they will not be here if this time, if school is not open, if the governor, the president, and all of their people say that we need to open. That's not gonna happen. So we are tasked, and you said great, we're tasked with making it happen safe and effective. And I think we've done a great job in the 2 weeks. I think that gives us some extra time. You know what, if it would have come down to August 10th, I could have still, I voted for it. And I said then, we all said, this is a fluid situation. We saw the numbers, we see the numbers every day. And here we are, 2 weeks. I think this is fine. I would support your recommendation. And again, thank you, Mr. Krumpenbacher too, for pointing that out. But again, 6,400 employees, again, times that number by 4 or 5 to the amount of people you're affecting if they don't get a paycheck. And then 93%, I think that number is huge to folks that are saying, yes, we want school open. So I think we have to remember that. So with that, Mr. Chairman,
I'll make a motion to approve the alternate.
Second.
There is a motion to approve by Mr. Thacker and a second by Mr. Booth. I'm not gonna call for any further discussion. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Opposed, state nay. All right, I think I registered 5-0. Alright, so that takes us to, there's no unfinished business. I don't know, does any board member have new business? Superintendent, do you have any?
Executive session upstairs for the purpose of talking about bargaining.
Before I recess for that, I will go ahead and, just give an opportunity for final board member comments if there's any. I'll start with Mr. Thacker, Mr. Castillo, and myself, Mr. Whitehall.
I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Real quick. Is Mr. Thacker's face shield approved? Actually, this was a question. Since Terry got to ask all these questions, all my kids wanna know if they can wear their fishing scarves as masks.
You want one?
Yes, you can.
It
No, I
covers
have
their
one.
nose and mouth. Does not have offensive pictures or profanity or something on it. It's perfectly appropriate.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did not mean to prolong the meeting.
So that would mean Graber's mask is unacceptable.
Graber's mask should be handed out to all students.
Alright, so I hereby adjourn this, recess this meeting for executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.